Okay, so um, before we even get into the topic today, I have to call this out.
Oh, Gore. What is it?
This is our 100th deep dive, which is just, honestly, it's kind of surreal to say out loud.
It really is. I mean, 100, that's a lot of talking.
Yeah, and if you've been with us since the beginning, you know that back when we started, we were using this incredibly cheap, like $40 microphone.
Oh, it sounded so bad.
Total garbage. And, we were just dealing with massive amounts of anxiety, just hoping someone anywhere would actually listen. But we decided that instead of a long, self-indulgent intro, the best way to celebrate is just to make sure the quality of today's deep dive is the real milestone.
I love that. Let's just deliver a great deep dive. But before we jump in, just a quick disclaimer as always, everything we discuss today is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not financial advisors, we're not licensed consultants. We share research and publicly documented stories. But nothing here is a guarantee of income, and nothing should be taken as personalized financial advice. So always do your own research.
Absolutely. And look, today's topic,
Mhm.
if a guy who made $30 million
Mhm.
can end up completely financially stressed out of his mind in just 2 years, we can all learn something from that. And I definitely include myself in that.
Yeah, it's wild. I want you to picture this. Really try to put yourself in this specific headspace for a second. You are 22 years old. You just signed your first NFL contract.
Okay, I'm 22.
Overnight, literally overnight, you are making more money in a single year than your entire neighborhood makes in a decade.
Right. It's a total paradigm shift.
Exactly. Your parents cry when you tell them the news. You buy your mom a house,
Yeah.
and you just feel like you've completely solved it. Like whatever money stress you grew up with is just permanently, completely behind you.
We've won a game.
You think you have. Now, I want you to fast forward 15 years. You're 37. Your athletic career ended when you were 29, and you are sitting in a lawyer's office filing for bankruptcy.
Man, that's rough.
It sounds like a cautionary tale from a movie script, but it is the exact documented trajectory of dozens of professional athletes. And today, we are going to unpack the mechanics of how that much wealth just, completely vanishes.
Because instinctively, I think people just jump to the cliche, right? Like,
Oh.
oh, they just spent it all on sports cars, massive chains, and private jets.
Right, but the reality is far more complex than that. And the mechanisms that bankrupt an elite athlete are the exact same forces that can bankrupt someone living on, like, a $60,000 salary. They just operate a bit slower.
Okay, but to understand the scope of this, we first have to clear up a massive public misconception about the actual data.
Yes, the data is so important here.
Because if you spend any time following finance, you have probably seen that viral statistic claiming that 78% of NFL players go broke within 2 years of retiring. It's literally everywhere.
It's constantly repeated.
But according to rigorous academic research, that number is, well, it's flawed.
It's deeply flawed. That 78% figure, it originally comes from a 2009 Sports Illustrated article, and it just paints a picture that isn't entirely accurate.
So what are the real numbers?
So researchers from the National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBER, they conducted this massive study tracking NFL players over time to get the real numbers. What they actually found is that about 1.9% filed for bankruptcy within 2 years of retiring.
Yeah, 1.9%? That's a huge difference from 78.
Massive. Now, if you stretch that timeline out to 12 years post-retirement, that number climbs to about 15.7%.
Okay, so 15.7% is a massive drop from 78%. But, I mean, when you look at the broader context, that is still a shocking statistic.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, for the general population, the bankruptcy rate in any given year is roughly, what, 1 to 2%?
Yeah, exactly. Around 1 to 2%.
So, even using the rigorous academic data, former players are filing for bankruptcy at a dramatically higher rate than the average American.
Right.
And we are talking about people who, in a lot of cases, earn tens of millions of dollars.
And independent analysts confirm this underlying pattern is incredibly consistent across all major sports, not just the NFL.
See, there is a detail in that NBER data that completely shatters how most people view this problem. And it's the detail that just jumps off the page for me.
The earnings data.
Yes. The researchers found that the athletes who earned more money and had longer careers went bankrupt at basically the exact same rate as the athletes who earned less and had shorter careers.
Which is counterintuitive to how we normally think about money.
Right. If adding 5 or 10 million more dollars into the bank account doesn't change the bankruptcy rate at all, then the variable isn't the total amount of money.
So what do you think it is?
To me, that proves this is entirely a behavioral issue. It points to a profound lack of individual discipline rather than, a math problem.
Yeah.
If you have 30 million and go broke, you just lack self-control.
I mean, I hear that, but labeling it purely as a lack of individual discipline kind of ignores the environment these young athletes are placed in. Behavior never happens in a vacuum.
Fair enough.
To really understand the collapse, we need to look at documented real-world examples and see the specific traps that cause this wealth destruction. Let's look at some stories.
Okay, let's start with Ronaldinho.
Oh, Ronaldinho.
Yeah, if you don't follow soccer, Ronaldinho is widely considered one of the most talented players in the history of the sport. He was absolute magic on the field for Barcelona.
Truly one of a kind.
And based on public reporting, his career earnings were estimated to be around $125 million. Yet in 2018, Brazilian authorities actually seized his passport.
Over what?
Over roughly $2 million in unpaid debts related to an environmental lawsuit.
See, that right there, you don't go from earning an estimated $125 million to having your passport seized over a $2 million debt just because you bought too many designer clothes.
Exactly.
That kind of collapse, it's the result of structural financial neglect. It's the unglamorous side of wealth destruction. It's completely ignoring basic legal obligations, skipping tax payments, and just being surrounded by bad advisors.
Which perfectly illustrates the danger of not knowing how to build a professional infrastructure. Because when you get a massive income spike without any financial education, and remember, the average NFL career is just 3.3 years, it creates this vacuum.
Yes.
And that vacuum is quickly filled by incompetent or just straight-up predatory advisors.
This brings up a concept everyone listening really needs to understand, and that is the fiduciary.
Right. Explain that because it's crucial.
A fiduciary is a professional who is legally obligated to act in your best financial interest. If you suddenly come into wealth and lack financial literacy, you are incredibly vulnerable to people who call themselves advisors but are actually just brokers.
Just salesmen, really.
Exactly. I like to think of bad advisors as toll booths on a highway. Every single time you make a move, whether your investment wins or loses, they siphon off a percentage of your wealth through massive commissions and fees.
It's brutal.
They aren't trying to steal your car. They just want to charge you a massive toll every single mile you drive.
And those toll booths will just bleed you dry over a decade. But let's look at another documented collapse that has a completely different root cause. Adriano.
The emperor.
Yeah, known as the Emperor when he was dominating for Inter Milan in the mid-2000s. Physically, he was unstoppable. But he retired early, and according to multiple reports, he ended up living in a favela in Rio de Janeiro.
Adriano's story is so heartbreaking because it complicates that lazy narrative we were talking about earlier. His downfall wasn't triggered by an urge to buy expensive watches or fund bad investments.
Right, it was much deeper.
His story is fundamentally about immense grief. His father died when Adriano was at the height of his career, and that led to a profound mental health and psychological collapse. He felt a deep alienation from the world of professional football and essentially just walked away.
So the financial ruin was a symptom, not the cause.
Exactly. The underlying mechanism here is the psychological void. Because for an elite athlete, forced retirement usually happens around age 28 or 30. For their entire adult life, their identity has been tied to physical performance.
Yeah, they're used to the adrenaline of 60,000 people screaming their name.
And then suddenly it's a random Tuesday morning and their house is completely silent.
I can't even imagine that whiplash.
Some experts call this sudden wealth syndrome mixed with a severe identity crisis. Emotional, impulsive spending becomes the subconscious way to artificially recreate that lost adrenaline and fill the psychological void. When you make millions but have zero psychological support, the money just cannot save you.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. There's another psychological trap, though, that I find fascinating, mostly because it's the one I've personally fallen into.
Oh, do tell.
Let's look at Diego Forlán, another legend of South American soccer, an incredible Uruguayan superstar. After retiring, he decided to open a restaurant in Uruguay. And according to reports, it failed, bringing serious financial stress along with it.
The restaurant industry is notoriously brutal. I mean, studies suggest the failure rate for a new restaurant is roughly 60% in the very first year alone.
60%? That's insane.
It is. The operation requires managing complex inventory, food spoilage, and super tight margins. Those are skills that have absolutely zero overlap with scoring goals on a pitch.
This is what I call the domain confidence trap. Elite athletes spend their entire lives building an almost superhuman level of self-belief. They have to, just to survive at that elite level.
Right.
but they mistakenly believe that confidence transfers to completely unrelated domains. Like, I'll be real with you. I work in tech here in Austin. I understand software.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah. A few years ago, I thought, I understand algorithms. I'll just start a global dropshipping business. I mean, how hard can it be?
Oh, no. How did that go?
Well, it turns out global supply chain logistics is incredibly hard. I failed miserably. Just like my tech skills didn't make me a logistics guru, an athlete's footwork doesn't make them a hospitality expert.
We also see that domain confidence trap play out in the people they choose to go into business with, which brings us to another major mechanism of wealth destruction, and that's entourage economics.
Entourage economics. Yeah, and that isn't just about buying your childhood friend a nice car. A one-time expense, even a big one, rarely bankrupts a multimillionaire. The real danger is creating dependent lifestyles.
Exactly. When a newly wealthy individual puts childhood friends, extended family, and acquaintances on the payroll out of loyalty, they are treating personal relationships as a business strategy.
Which never works out.
Never. The danger is that they aren't just giving gifts, they are establishing recurring monthly overhead. They are paying for multiple salaries, multiple apartment leases, multiple insurance policies.
They're basically funding the operational bloat of a small corporation, but without any of the incoming revenue to actually support it.
Yes, it bleeds capital continuously. And what's really heartbreaking about it is that it usually comes from deep love. It's the desire to say, I made it out and I'm bringing all of you with me.
Right. It's toxic corporate bloat applied to a personal checking account. And that bloat is usually supercharged by the final mechanism, which is extreme lifestyle inflation.
Let's define that, because for a normal person, lifestyle inflation usually means like you get a promotion, so you upgrade your car lease, or you start buying name brand groceries instead of generic.
Right.
For a professional athlete, lifestyle inflation is going from living in a college dorm room to buying a private jet and a sprawling mansion in the span of 3 months.
It's on a totally different scale.
But let's elevate that concept. Psychologists refer to this as the hedonic treadmill. The idea is that human beings have a baseline level of happiness. When you experience a massive positive change like signing a $20 million contract, your happiness spikes.
Sure.
But your baseline for what feels normal resets incredibly quickly. Within a few months, flying first class doesn't feel like a luxury anymore. It feels like the bare minimum requirement for existing. Luxuries morph into necessities, and the baseline cost of your life skyrockets so fast you never build a financial buffer.
Look, I hear everything you're saying about the hedonic treadmill and the psychological voids and the toll booth advisors, but I still look at these mechanisms and see a fundamental failure of individual accountability.
Really? Even with all the structural issues?
Yes. Yes, the environment is incredibly difficult. But at a certain point, the math is the math. If you are bleeding capital on restaurants that don't make money or funding an entourage of 10 people, someone has to exercise the willpower to say no. It requires discipline to look at the numbers and stop the bleeding.
I understand the focus on the math, I do, but you are taking a 22-year-old, potentially from a low-income background, and throwing them into a sudden wealth event with only a 3.3-year earning window.
Right.
You're putting them on a global stage with no financial education, surrounding them with advisors who actively want to drain their accounts, and burying them under immense cultural pressure to display their wealth to their peers. Expecting pure willpower and discipline to win against those systemic forces, day in and day out, is asking a lot of human nature.
I mean, I don't think we're going to solve the nature versus nurture debate today, and that's okay. Because whether you view this as a failure of individual discipline or a massive systemic failure, all of these mechanisms boil down to one profound misunderstanding.
Yes, the core thesis of the deep dive today. And this concept, it affects you, listening right now, just as much as it affects a professional athlete.
And here it is. Income and wealth are not the same thing.
Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays.
Let's make that contrast incredibly stark. If a point guard earns $30 million in his career, but his hedonic treadmill, his bad investments, and his entourage cost him $31 million, he has negative wealth. He is entirely broke.
Right.
Contrast that with the classic story of the teacher or the janitor who never made more than, say, $60,000 a year, but quietly saved and invested $8,000 a year into index funds over 3 decades. That person has real, tangible wealth.
Because the mechanisms draining a $20 million contract, the lifestyle inflation, the bad advice, the emotional spending, they are working on your $60,000 salary right now. They just operate at a slower, quieter pace.
So how do we fight back? Because not all athletes go broke. Let's look at the source data and see what the financial survivors actually did differently.
We can call this the playbook of the survivors.
I like that. The playbook of the survivors.
The patterns of the athletes who preserve their wealth are remarkably consistent, and honestly, they are wonderfully boring. First, they started building alternative income streams while they were still playing, not after they retired.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. Like, when I was living in Denver, building my first income stream, selling motion templates, I kept my day job while I built it. You need that overlap. LeBron James is the perfect modern athlete example. He didn't wait for his physical performance to decline to start building his media and production companies. Building that infrastructure early creates a safety net that catches them before the psychological void of retirement can even hit.
Second, they treated their sports career as a temporary job from day one. Mechanically, this means they capped their lifestyle burn rate based on a 3 to 5 year timeline, not a 30-year career.
It's all about extending that runway.
Exactly. Third, they hired actual fiduciary advisors incredibly early, and they used them as gatekeepers. They didn't hand their millions to their buddy from high school to manage. They built a professional infrastructure.
And a key function of that infrastructure is having a fiduciary act as the bad guy. When the entourage asks for a handout or a cousin pitches a terrible business idea, the athlete doesn't have to say no directly. They can just point to their fiduciary who will reject it based on the math.
It totally removes the emotional strain. And finally, they ignored the flashy, ego-driven ventures. They didn't swing for the fences by funding holograms or starting video game studios in industries they didn't understand.
Right.
They invested in boring, diversified assets. They bought broad market index funds. They kept it simple.
Which is funny, right? The ultimate highly guarded secret to preserving $50 million is the exact same boring advice required to manage $5,000. Buy index funds, control your baseline spending, and plan for the long term.
It's literally the same math. So let's translate these elite-level lessons into immediate, actionable steps for your daily life. We have 3 specific takeaways for you today based on everything we've covered.
Let's do it. Takeaway number 1, audit your own lifestyle inflation.
This means opening up your bank app and pulling your last 3 months of statements. Look at the last time you got a raise or a bonus. Can you point to exactly where that extra money went?
Did it increase your wealth, or did your baseline for normal just quietly reset?
Right. Did that money organically get swallowed up by delivery apps, a slightly nicer car lease, or higher rent? You need to track the exact destination of your income spikes.
Takeaway number 2, name your entourage economics. Take an honest, uncomfortable look at your relationships. Who in your life regularly lands their financial needs on your shoulders?
It might not be a massive payroll.
No, maybe it's just a friend who constantly needs to be spotted for dinners, or a family member whose emergencies always seem to require your credit card. You have to identify those recurring drains and establish boundaries before they become dependent lifestyles that bleed your capital.
Takeaway number 3, close the income-wealth gap. Decide in advance exactly what percentage of any new money will go directly toward wealth building.
Pay yourself first.
Exactly. Whether it's an annual raise, a holiday bonus, or a tax refund, don't wait to see what is left over at the end of the month. Decide right now that 30 or 50% of all new income goes straight to investments, and automate it so you don't even have to think about it.
Automation is key there.
So as we wrap up this 100th deep dive, I want to leave you with a reflection question. You can answer it in your head or, drop it down in the comments below. Was there an athlete story today that hit differently for you?
Or, if you're feeling brave, what was a specific moment in your own life when you realized the hedonic treadmill had sped up and lifestyle inflation was quietly creeping into your bank account?
We read all the comments, and we really love hearing your experiences.
We do. And if you have found value in our deep dives both today and over the last 99 conversations, we'd love for you to subscribe and hit the bell so we can keep exploring these topics and learning alongside you.
Build the gap. Protect the gap. Grow the gap.